Hello everyone, and welcome back to my rusty RP-1 playthrough, where now we're going back into the human spaceflight business, except not quite yet, because first we're going to send up this thing that doesn't actually have any crew, because it's still a little over a year before anybody will be trained to fly on these things. So I guess we need stuff to do meanwhile. How are we doing on this? 1962, January 13th. So we'll basically have half a year to do lunar stuff. I think we need to invest a whole lot of money in a whole lot of upgrades. Meanwhile, let's see what else we can take on. Totes, we can do that. Well, I guess we'll have to wait a little bit because we want to do it with crew. Yeah, that's not enough money. I guess we can toss up another one of these. We're almost at the point where we can accept this. So what does this require? It just requires an apogee over 150. First docking requires absolutely nothing special. That's interesting. This doesn't require a maneuver. If we launch to 200 by 450, we reach both of these conditions. So it doesn't actually require any maneuvers. I think you need to do these in succession, so you do need the 7 days endurance. Which is a shame because we'll get the 3-day record and then there'll be another record, so we won't actually get the 7-day record. Need to change how that contract works if there's a way. If it weren't for a performance impact, we just have all the duration records active at once. Come on. Why is this not working? There we are. Before I forget, I need to grab the Aegina docking thing so that we can do that rendezvous contract. But annoyingly, I would have to close KSP and reopen it to do that. Right. So yeah, I just said we need a year, so we have to wait 6 months or so before we can take these contracts. So meanwhile, nah. I'm not racing anybody. I can just warp some. All right, let's invest some money. So we need to save up a reserve for unlocking parts because we're not going to get another chunk of change for a while. Oh, first let's get the upgrade points from that. Yeah, that speeds things up a bit. And now look at all the things we can invest in. So step one for sure, Hydrolux engines. And then even better Hydrolux engines because we get a relightable large upper stage engine. Next step, we want space station prototypes so we can do some space station contracts. TL3 RCS, that'd be nice. What's in here? Ah, the F1. The Astris, very useful little engine. And a bunch of upgrades. What does this give us? The Saturn IU, probably? Did this give us the... Yeah. All right, so we actually already unlocked that. Well, already researching that. I guess we might as well get some science. Then we can get some rocketry. Oh, we have enough science that I'm not even going to have to worry about this for a while. Seems weird that you can't do docking and crew. Really? Docking and crew transfer is out here? That it should be probably here. Yeah, the big Gemini docking ring is coming before docking and crew transfer. So that's a weird thing. Yeah, that should probably be back here. Lunar landing. We'll get more kick motors. Go to the outer planets. More science. All right. Dash 11 and a Vexen config. Enhanced LMDE. All right, so now we're actually should want more science because we used up our science. So now I'm sort of going to regret not sending those Mars and Venus missions. Hello. Got a bunch of points to invest. And let's use up some money. All right. Now our science rates are, well, that only shaved, it was 32 days, now it's 30 days. We didn't actually upgrade the science rate much, but we made a dent in the build rates. Yeah, so that's quite a bit better. Sorry about the dings. I guess I must have forgotten to turn the sound off here. One sec. I turned the IRC sound. All right. We'll get lunar rated heat shield soon, and then we can do a lunar film camera mission. In preparation for a lunar landing. I do have ScanSat installed, don't I? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we can do radar mapping of the moon and film return. That'll give us a nice little bit of science. Hey, Pap. There are a couple people left there on IRC. Not many. Oh, Pap, now that you're here, I was wondering what the logic was of docking and crew transfer being out here rather than here. Given that it seems like it would be a prerequisite for space station prototypes. And also that it would be the sort of thing you'd want for these things, which have like Soyuz and stuff in them. What's my maintenance right now? Per month, about 10K a month. That's not too bad. Well, I mean 9K a month. The name of the, well, the docking and crew transfer, but I don't know what the internal name is. And I can't tell you that because I can't have Notepad++ running while KSP is running or KSP crashes because I don't know why. It's a weird Windows 10 issue. So I was trying to figure out what to get here. All right, so we can make some nice money on these things. All right, so let's. So tell you what I'm going to do. We'll be right back. Although I'll keep the stream running because I need to restart actually with the Agena docking port in so that we can actually do a docking. Which means we get to launch Kerbal loading screen program. I put specimens if asked about Orca and Orca Doberman. So I put both in because Orca is the one launched on the uprated Corgi, which can just barely limp to orbit. Whereas the Orca Doberman has a significant load of repellent in it. Excuse me. Let's see, Agena TV. All right, that's the only thing that. So apparently the only textures Agena docking uses is Agena TV. Okay. Launching. And here we go. I did want to build the Corgi version because it's only about 3/4 of the cost. Well, I don't recall the cost exactly, but it's only about 3/4 of the build time, which is more important. So I was going to build that for the PAP. Yeah, I don't know why that node exists either. It was confusing to me. I think it should probably go. It probably should just replace advanced flight control, and everything in it should be in advanced flight control, and it should be renamed to docking or whatever. Yeah, I would combine both of those two nodes and leave it with the docking crew. Use the name for this node. Get rid of advanced flight control because it's not actually a node about flight control. It's a node about docking. Yep, it all makes sense. Props to whoever added the new loading screens. It's great to see an ISS and various other things. PAP, yeah, I would bring it back in line with that and make it a prerequisite for space stations as well. Because nobody would have made it, like, I cannot imagine somebody who would seriously have contemplated launching a space station that you couldn't dock to. And you'd have to EVA to get inside. I mean, like, you, like, they had the Mercury space station, and I think Mercury, like, docked to, and you didn't pass through that, but, like, I think it was berthing rather than docking, and they just, like, put air through the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, the only time that crew transfer between docked craft that was not through the docking tunnel was ever contemplated was for the 7K LOK N1L3 stack, where they were so desperate to save mass that they planned for, let's say, Leonov to do an EVA from the Soyuz descent module into the lunar lander, and then back again when he came back. And the docking was just to keep them together rather than for any kind of crew transfer. Because they basically, the reason why that lunar mission was so cursed was because N1, despite massing what Saturn V massed, was all Kerolox. And Kerolox, fine on the first stage, but you really, as I believe the famous Eve Pye said, you're really punching below your weight class if your upper stages are Kerolox and you're going beyond low Earth orbit. So it essentially had the TLI capability of about a third of Saturn V, despite massing the same, because it was forced to use Kerolox. So, is it a third? No, it must have been more than a third, because you can't do it on 15 tons. Could you? Yeah. No, I think it was about a third. We should look it up. But, let me find this out. Yeah, it was about a third. That's what I remembered. Yeah, that's why the N1L3 stack was so insane. Wikipedia is saying 23 tons, when about half. But I thought I remembered a third. Doesn't really matter. Blowfish, yeah, it's been working fine. That reminds me, PAP, I think the changes you made to the BDB engines broke rocket sound enhancement's MM patches. I'm not really sure why. So I'm not at head on RO. I'm a few commits back on RO, so that MM can still generate a config cache. Blowfish, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I mean, the logs appear to be 10 megs each, so 9 megs each. So yeah. Rocket sound enhancement, Pat? It's why my rockets sound pretty cool. Oh no. Come on, KSP, finish up. There we go. Okay. Let's try this again, only with more docking. Pap, that is excellent news. I'm glad to hear about sounding rockets. Yeah, as you can see, I've currently been paying a bit more attention to the middle of the campaign than the start, because we invested a lot of time in the start. Oh, I think that reminds me. Let's go to VAV to check. But I think one of the issues that I noticed is that none of the docking ports have any kind of entry cost modifiers. I think they used to. I don't know what happened to them. Kipling. So let's find the drogue. All right, that's a reasonable unlock cost for it. So let me find, where's our latest? Beagle Bobcat D. I think this was the thing with the, yes, with the AJ-10 mid and hydrazine. And we're gonna we're gonna give it some solar panels. Okay. That produces 156 watts. How the heck big is that? And this Delta Avionics unit requires... Oh, I didn't fix the duplicate avionics. 120 watts. All right, so that's fine. We'll use what we got here. There's that. All right. That will do. Interesting. How heavy is that? 200 kilograms. That's interesting. I see. I see. That makes some sense. This is an H. Oh, this is. Oh, it's an LR79. It's not even an H1. I thought we upgraded this to an H1. Doesn't really matter. We have enough Delta V. We're fine. And there's just these things that will cost a little bit of extra money. Who cares? However, our staging is now utterly screwed. Alright, we're already on the right config. Alright, so we'll queue up one of these things. It will not take long to build. And we're going to start building our lunar thing. Where's the Orca Doberman? Alright. And let's merge in the Foxhound under it. Actually, no, let's see, this is why I do subassemblies. I've forgotten the advantages of subassemblies. We have to go in here and add some extra stages. It should be a prereq for stations. And I guess it should be a prereq for the capsules because often the capsule comes with the docking port. Let's try this again. You get to go away. Now we get to merge. This. Okay, and we don't actually need the retros in this case. Now, these things get to be full. And look at that delta V. That's an excellent quantity of delta V. I am middle clicking. Oh, no, I'm not. All right, so we're at max data on these engines. They're just not anywhere near, I guess, as reliable as an LR79. Let's look. Why? It shows we have way more than maximum data, but our current reliability is nowhere near maximum reliability. That's deeply confusing. Oh, I think there may be a bug where if you're over maximum data, it goes back to the start again. That might be an interesting test flight bug. If you're at more than max data, does it wrap the... Oh, I bet the float curve is set to wrap mode instead of clamp. And that would explain... So that is a deep, deep bug with tech flight. With test flight. If its float curves are set to wrap instead of clamp. Because then engines will be seriously less reliable than they otherwise would be. Okay. Then it looked like our reliability on those is about equal. So one thing I've neglected to do is add a launch escape system. But it's Gemini, you're supposed to eject anyway. Those things are inside the launch vehicle. That's nice. All right, let's spend some serious cash on tooling. Oh, that's right. I used the same sizes for all of these things, so now they're tooled. All right. But these things are not tooled. This is also going to be expensive. Yes, it is. And finally, the boat tail. Okay. That's all tooled. That was a pretty chunk of change. Launch cost $150,000. So we're talking about, combined with that cost, not much south of $200 million. in 1965 costs to go to the moon. Let's check staging. Plonk. Plonk. And then that. And those retros. And the Devons are all 10s. And then that. And that. And that. And those. It's a little, so here's the question. The launch cost information we have for Saturn 1, so for Saturn 1B and Saturn 5, the fundamental question is, are those launch costs for just the launch vehicle, or do they include the payload? If they are for just the launch vehicle, then this cost is absolutely correct. If they are for the launch vehicle and the payload, so like if the launch cost for that we know of for Saturn V, which is about $412 million in 1965 dollars, if that's launch cost for a full Saturn Apollo stack, then our launch costs are too high, definitely. If it's just for the launch vehicle and then there's another couple $100 million on top of that for dealing with the capsule and everything else, then our launch costs are pretty much bang on at the moment. It's going to take a year to build this. That feels strange. Like I thought we had more build points than that. More VP a sec. But I guess 4 VP a sec is just not that high. So let's bite the bullet and build a couple, which will be expensive. But we have plenty of delta V for the correct lunar trajectory. Yeah, we probably have like 100 to 200 meters per second to spare. That is a very aggressive taper in. We have a fat rocket underneath this. $145 million in then year cost. What year is that 145 in? Okay, and that was 68? Yeah, no, it obviously isn't today's dollars, but I was just wondering if the book was written in like 1975, then it might be 1975 dollars. But assuming it's current year dollars, then that actually squares with the numbers we have, which was that the launch price of a Saturn 1B was about 100 million, and then the extra 45 But that implies that there's no right. Yeah, so ultimately there's now that's interesting, Piano Josh, because that number is lower than the number we have for a Saturn V launch, which we didn't know whether it had stuff or not. So now we have strong disagreement with our numbers because the Nautix numbers we had for launch costs for Saturn 1B and Saturn V were about 100 million and about 415 million. Now you're saying that Apollo 7 was 145, which makes sense to me. But I would expect if it's not including the capsule and everything else, then it would be, yeah. Yeah, Pap, I think our Apollo costs are maybe too high then. I mean, the problem with the whole problem, as Piano Josh says, the whole problem with this is that how do you actually apportion launch cost? Like, it's not like you'd have a bucket, because if part of like, if launch cost is we've already paid all this other stuff, and what's the marginal cost to launch another one of these things? That's probably not correct for us because we're amortizing some of the human infrastructure into that, particularly for crewed launches, like the medical support and the tracking support and a bunch of other stuff. And that's why that's why the human rated multiplier is high. Anyway, let's see what we got. So that's going to take a year. So we definitely want to start building that soon. And boy, I hope we don't have to rush build any of these things. So what I am instead going to do, I am going to all right, so I think what this will mean, no, we want to do that first, I guess. Pap, what is that, this new ocean? I don't remember the numbers. Yeah, I don't think we can really extrapolate out. All right, let's spend some money. Well, that didn't go as far as I hoped it would. I mean, I guess it went somewhat far. Yeah, and maybe SG Kurt's professor has access to some similar data on Apollo. But the problem is a lot of that data is just going to be like NASA funding for the year on these various programs. And it's hard to say what of that was actually relevant to what. All right, so let's fly these test flights. Early landing. Lunar rated heat shields. Oh, I'm forgetting myself. Yeah, that was criminally stupid. Because these things need to be ready. All right, there's going to be a... We're going to call this Orca 0. All right. I think we're going to want to get that down to about 17 days as well. Pap, no, that's not what that tag does. Sorry. That's not how tags work either. The tag is about KCT launch cost stuff. It's not about real fuels. You should poke Starweister about adding an option to not increase costs based on tankage costs. All right, so 23 days sounds actually correct. Okay, and we want to warp another, I think, 3 days. Because the rollout for this will be way longer than for... Okay. So much tech. Yeah, so we need to roll it out here. It is now time, I think, to get these contracts. First docking and first EVA. That will give us a shot in the arm in terms of money. But it's going to be real fun to get enough money for the astronaut complex upgrade, which is expensive. Yeah, Pap, I'm wondering if the human moon landing advance is too low. Because you have to upgrade to a big pad, and you have to do the $5 billion there. It's 3 million? Billion, whatever. $3 billion. Whereas, which is really not much more than crewed lunar flyby. And together, lunar flyby and orbit have the same. So advanced should probably be more like five or six. I don't know. I don't know. That may be too much. Okay. That's a little better on build rate. All right, so we're not going to roll that out yet because that's still 104 days away. So we're going to actually start building that fallback. Pap, exactly. Well, I mean, you're expected, if you're going the Apollo style, you're expected to spend some of crewed lunar orbit and lunar flyby on unlocking Apollo. But there's just, to get the level 7 pad and all the Apollo tech, and to pay for the tooling for Saturn V, and to pay for the astronaut complex upgrade, that's probably like 10 million funds instead of 3 million funds. Or more than 10, actually, probably. All right, so let's go ahead and launch our test flight. With nobody aboard. All right. Let's go for a low orbit. Well, slightly higher. I think we want to do a slower pitch over. Oops. All right. Let's see how it goes. Heidi ho. Hey everybody, rating. It's going pretty well. Sending up this uncrewed test flight of the Orca CSM. We'll have to burn some of that to make orbit, which will not be the most fun. So, Pap, the problem with that approach is exactly the same problem with the sounding rocket contracts, or it's not the sounding rocket. The problem with that approach is exactly the problem with the old first orbit approach, except more so. Because imagine what happens. There's this contract that gives you 15 billion. So you, like, literally the first thing you do is take it. And then you have 15 billion funds. So you invest all the funds and stuff. And you have instantly a build rate of like 15 and a super high tech rate. And then it's trivial to complete all the other contracts. Like the reason we did what we did to first orbit was to get rid of that snowball. And I think that would only redouble the snowball. That would be snowball steroids. The only thing that could take away from that is basically if you took that contract, it disallowed every other thing. But at that point, then it's just playing with monthly budgets, except they're not monthly, they happen once at the start, and that is your budget. I set it to 0.4, the pitch program. So I would certainly hope it's more reasonable. Like, I get where you're going with that, Pap. Like, I think it would be interesting to play this with budgets rather than contracts, but you can't do both. Go. All right, so that will leave a fair amount of delta V. I mean, this is basically a Titan. That's why it looks Titan-esque. That is indeed an LR105 because we don't have a pretty LR91 that has upgrades in Carolox, because I don't really want to do hypergolics. Like hashtag Corolive was right. I wish the normal maps and things on these aligned. It always pisses me off when they just barely don't. No, it's Titan. It's a Carolox Titan 2. It's using H1s and an LR105 burning for 4 minutes. It's basically Carolox Titan 2, launching something that just happens to be rather heavier than Gemini. Turning on RCS so I don't forget. Blowfish, were you the one who was talking about an actual redesign of the LR105 to be airlightable? Somebody was talking about that. Like, there was actually some work done on it, and it'd be interesting to see what the penalties were. Alright, we should... Yep, we're just waiting for our speed to get up to 6.5 km/sec. Somebody was talking about that article. Somebody found some information on it. Because like one of the early Juno 5/Saturn studies, yeah, no, I know you're talking about the X-45. One of those studies envisioned an Atlas on top of the Saturn 1 core instead of a Titan. And that obviously would have required airlighting the Atlas. Here we go. Why you no stage? This is a proper looking craft. Have we met these conditions finally? Yes. Now we just have to return home. Maybe Cobalt Wolf or Sound and Fury talked about it. I forget. We'll have to ask on Discord who found those references. But yeah, this actually even looks a lot like Gemini because of the stringers. All right. So, looking good. We're going to try a lifting reentry. Of about like that. That seems like a reasonable place to come in. All right. Actually, let's not do that. Let's do this. All right, that seems about right. So let's put it right over some comms things. All right, and let's warp to next maneuver. As expected, our electric charge usage is what we expected. All right, let's see how that does for a lifting reentry. Whoa, how did we... Uh-oh. We're way low. Where's descent mode? Wait, you're kidding me. How does this not have descent mode? Did it already have the offset COM? Something's fishy. I'm seriously confused. What's going on where this doesn't have descent mode? Unless somehow it has automatic descent mode. Oh, wait. It has COM offset limit. Maybe the COM was just always offset already? Well, let's find out what's going on. Get rid of that maneuver. Come on. There. And turn that off and that off and just work on roll. Yeah, so what descent mode means is that, so Mercury performed a ballistic reentry. Oh, Piano Josh is explaining in chat. Yes. So if you have the way you perform a lifting reentry is you don't have your center of mass in line with your center of pressure. So if you have the center of mass out here, then naturally the capsule will orient along this axis, basically. That will tilt you up into the airflow, which will produce lift from the air bouncing off this and going down. Do we have some like rando control locks or something? Input locks. Why is control locker control locking given that we have avionics? That confuses me. I think because it's using the 1.5 ton instead of 2.5 ton avionics setting. Yeah, it has a so back to why you'd want to use it and why you wouldn't. Interesting. Apparently it's inverted. Or not? The heck is going on with this? Alright, I'll have to figure out what exactly is going on with this. I guess we're doing a ballistic reentry. Well, this is why we fly flight tests. Yeah, so you're trading off G-loading and the fact that you can stay higher in the atmosphere longer, which if you can re-radiate the heat is good for you. Basically, there's three ways you can deal with heat. You can soak it until the heat source is gone and then radiate it slowly. You can try to get to equilibrium and radiate as much as you're taking in, or at least radiate some of what you're taking in and combine it with heat sinking. That's what Shuttle did. Or you can have ablator. that actually literally burns off and cools you down. Um, so the point of a lifting reentry is that it increases the total heat load, but it decreases the peak heat flux, which means that if you have a maximum flux you can withstand, then you should be doing a lifting reentry. And if you're shuttle or something that relies heavily on re-radiating the heat, then you have to do a lifting reentry because you don't care about the total heat load as long as you can, radiate it outwards again. If you're running a heat sink approach like the early ICBM warheads, then for sure you want the sharpest reentry possible. Oh, I guess we're coming down in the middle of Texas. Or maybe that's Mexico. Can't tell. So in terms of practical use, it wasn't that aggressive a trajectory. The entry angle was very low because our entry perigee was still 35 kilometers, even though the entry velocity was high. In terms of when you'd want to use it, well, you probably... Come on. Why is that not actually... Whole lot of weirdness. That should have decoupled. It seems not to have. It's confusing. That seems kind of buggy too. Hopefully our chutes actually deploy. Status locked. We don't even have a decouple option on it? That's kind of bad. Yeah, so when you want to use it, well, if your capsule is burning up on reentry because the heat load is too high, then turn off descent mode and come in ballistically and accept the higher Gs. That's what's relevant. If you don't want your crew to get knocked out, then you probably want to use lifting reentry. This is concerning. So apparently the nose cone didn't decouple properly for some reason. So I'll have to figure out why that was. And also for some reason, the parachutes aren't deploying, presumably because they think they're still shielded. So let's see what we can do. And we fell through the ground. But we're landed now. That was a weird, buggy time. For a second, there, at least I can click that. All right. On that weird note, I'm going to call it quits. thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.